Okay, Rick Holmes told me quick. So I'm going to go 1, 2, 3, 4. Number 1. This is kind of an unusual feast, exaltation of the Holy Cross. I mean, the cross usually means to us a very, very moving, let's say, combination of feelings within us, from sorrow for sin to love of Christ. So it's kind of a Catholic thing, you know, to have this exaltation of the Holy Cross. What's that all about? But when I'm thinking of something that could be considered as tragic and as barbarous as Christ's death on the cross, it makes me think of other things in this life, things that you experience, heartaches, and the death of those you love. This 3rd anniversary of Arnie's passing. We know how grief is a walk to be walked, and it just doesn't go away. It's something that you have to kind of put in a proper place by, in an odd way, continuing a relationship with that individual who's gone. It's the healthiest way. So there's this pain we experience. There's hunger sometimes that we experience. There's the heat that we experience. And I kind of think, why all of this negative? And then it kind of dawns on me, we would never know what up was if we didn't know what down was. It's kind of a fact of the universe. We won't know what cool and comfortable is like and really appreciate it until we know how it is when it's really hot and really miserable and really sticky. And this can go through all of these different realities in our lives. Well, that's number 1. Number 2, this death of Christ. You know, the exaltation of the Holy Cross. I mean, are we making a big deal out of a chunk of wood? Second thing about the evil that Christ endured was that he put his handprint, fingerprint, his stamp, his identification on that, which was a Roman means of capital punishment. It wasn't that the cross was so darn holy. It was what he did in touching that cross. What he did was to take the difficult, the painful in life, and model to us that somehow that would have value. Value that would go beyond the individual's friends, the people who knew that person one-on-one, and even to all people living, that somehow that suffering, that negative, was transformed into a blessing for all. So today we say, number 1, you know, up or down. Number 2, it's not about the cross, but it's actually about how Christ actually touched this evil and turned it into good. And the third thing is, what about us? What about all these little things I've mentioned that seem small in comparison to the cross? But in some cases, we can even think of things in our own lives that seem to outweigh the cross. There was a lady one time who said, "Oh yeah, Jesus, yeah, you only had to do it for 3 hours." I have to suffer day in, day out, week in, week out. No, that's kind of a little, let's say, askew. But we do have significant things that we suffer. And I guess what we're challenged on this exaltation of the Holy Cross, as Christ exalted and made into a blessing that negative, what is it that we're doing in our lives to change what we run into a blessing? Do we do it by complaining and by griping? Do we do it by becoming angry or by withdrawing to become depressed or turn away? Or is it that somehow we have faith that just as Christ touched the cross and made it something that we can exalt and be joyful in, what are we doing in this life to touch those things that surround us, even the negatives, and turn them somehow into a positive and into a blessing? Even if we go down to the good old offer it up. Finally, I've always believed that, how do you really say what life is about? And you know, there's volumes written about theology and volumes written about philosophy and all of those things. And as I begin to move on in life, I always appreciate the very simple. And my new harangue, my new responsorial psalm is, what are we here for? We are here to come into this world and leave something here a little better than when we came in, as a result of our presence, as a result of our touching our crosses, and our touching our joys, and our example and our modeling. And so that when we leave, hopefully, some of that will become immortal, and some of that will have an effect on this world that seems at times so full of pain and suffering, of journalists being beheaded, of atrocities happening. It can just take us down. And at times they do. And at times when it takes us down, it's a testimony to your own sensitivity and your own care. But what do we do in our day-to-day existence to say, despite what's going on, how are we going to touch this world and make it a better place? And we just have to look back at Jesus Christ on the cross and know what really made that execution different than every other one, besides the fact that it brought about our salvation. But because of this fact, it did bring about our salvation. And it was all done out of love. Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. So maybe we need to take this reality and know that no matter how tough it gets, God doesn't send it to us at all. I do not believe that God doesn't give us any more than we can handle. God doesn't give it to us. Sometimes there are things in this life that are too much for us to handle. That's where God comes in and does His very best to lift us up and to carry us on. So that when we go, we can look back and see, the world was left a little bit better when we came in. And that will be an exaltation of our little holy crosses. Please rise now and let us profess them.